April 29th, 1945. The sun hasn't yet touched the ridges of Okinawa. The air is thick with smoke and the acrid tang of cordite. You can almost hear the wind whispering through jagged rocks, carrying the distant thump of artillery and the rattling staccato of machine gun fire. Every shadow seems alive, every crag a potential hiding place for death. Private First Class Desmond Doss crouches behind a jagged outcropping, helmet caked with mud, bandages tucked in his pouch. His hands are trembling not from fear, but from the chill, the adrenaline, and the sheer weight of what's coming. Around him, men scream and shout, some urging each other forward, some begging silently for courage they don't feel. The ridge ahead rises like a jagged wall. Japanese positions cling to it, firing relentlessly. Mortars plow trenches and scatter debris in clouds of dust. Men fall, sometimes with a thud, sometimes silently, their bodies blending into the rocks and shrubbery. You can almost feel the shock as each shot lands too close, each explosion twisting reality into chaos. Doss carries no rifle, not a single weapon. His uniform is unremarkable, but his mission is extraordinary. He is a medic. His oath to save lives burns hotter than any weapon in the war. The others see the bullets, the grenades, the hell of the battlefield, and yet he moves forward. Each step is deliberate. Each movement is measured against death. Then it begins. A wounded soldier lies pinned to the slope, screaming for help. Doss doesn't hesitate. He sprints across open ground, dodging shrapnel and bullets, feeling the sting of gravel slicing his palms. He reaches the man, wraps his arms around him, and drags him inch by agonizing inch toward safety. Behind him, another explosion rocks the ridge, spraying dirt and blood. He barely registers the pain. One soldier saved, but dozens more remain. The morning light is cruel, cutting sharp lines across the jagged rocks of Hacksaw Ridge. Smoke curls like living fingers over the battlefield, and you can see the flashes, brief, blinding bursts, where mortars strike and rifles spit fire. Every step forward feels like stepping into a furnace. Doss doesn't run. He doesn't flinch. He moves methodically, scanning for wounded men, listening for their groans and cries. Around him, the 77th Infantry Division fights a battle that feels endless. Soldiers shout orders, some give up in despair, some stumble through the mud with exhaustion written into every line of their faces. A burst of machine gun fire rakes across the slope. Gravel and dirt shower him, and the wind carries the metallic scent of blood. You can almost feel it in your lungs. Another soldier lies just ahead, pinned under a pile of debris. Doss drops his pack and charges across open ground. Bullets whip past his helmet. His heart hammers in his chest, but he doesn't stop. He reaches the man, checks him quickly, and secures him on his back. The weight is enormous, but Doss lifts him as if gravity had no say. Inch by inch, he drags the soldier toward cover. Every movement is measured, every breath counted. Behind him, explosions carve craters in the earth, and the screams of men and the roar of artillery fill the air. Commanders watch in disbelief. "That boy is risking his life for every man on that slope," one mutters. They expected fear. They expected hesitation. But what they see instead is relentless courage. Doss goes again, and again, and again. Each trip feels longer than the last, each crossing a defiance of death itself. By mid-morning, he has saved dozens. But the ridge is unforgiving. The Japanese fire shows no mercy. You begin to wonder, how long can one man survive this storm? By midday, Hacksaw Ridge has become a hellscape of smoke, blood, and shattered rock. You can almost hear the battlefield breathing, each explosion a gasp, each scream a heartbeat. Soldiers cling to the slope, some crawling, some too wounded to move, eyes wide with terror and hope intertwined. Doss moves again. No hesitation, no thought of himself. He crosses open ground, exposed to sniper fire and bursting mortar rounds. You can almost feel the heat from the blasts, the shards of rock and metal slicing the air around him. He reaches a soldier, a young private barely old enough to shave, pinned under a fallen comrade. Desmond lifts him gently, careful not to worsen the injuries, and begins the slow drag toward safety. The climb is grueling. Every inch of progress is a battle against gravity, fatigue, and the chaos around him. Sweat mingles with blood, running into his eyes, stinging with every blink. Around him, men yell, fire crackles, and the air vibrates with the relentless pounding of mortars. Yet Doss does not stop. One man saved, then another, then another. At one point, a shell explodes just meters away, showering him with dirt and debris. He pauses for barely a heartbeat, enough to check the soldier he carries, and pushes onward. Commanders can't believe what they're seeing. They've sent platoons into that same fire and lost half their men. And yet this single medic, unarmed, is moving back and forth, time and time again, through a corridor of death, bringing the wounded to safety. Some soldiers start whispering his name, almost in disbelief. Doss, he's insane, but he's saving them all. And in that chaos, a realization spreads. This one man may be holding the line in a way no weapon ever could. But the ridge is not done with him. A sudden barrage shifts the earth beneath him, and for a terrifying second, it seems as if everything might end in an instant. Dust and smoke hang thick in the air, turning the morning sun into a dull, orange haze. You can almost feel the grit in your mouth and the tension vibrating in the earth. Doss pauses for a fraction of a second, just long enough to see the extent of the carnage around him. Bodies lie twisted in the mud, rifles abandoned, and the cries of the wounded pierce the relentless roar of artillery. A soldier screams from a ledge above him, his leg shattered, dangling over the cliff. Doss doesn't hesitate. He hoists himself upward, fingers gripping rock and metal, mud sliding from his hands, sweat blinding him. Every second feels like an eternity as he reaches the private, securing him to his back. The weight is immense, but the medic's resolve is heavier. Mortar shells explode a mere few feet away, shaking the ridge violently. You can almost hear the rock shattering under the force, smell the sulfur in the air, feel the tremor of the earth through your boots. Yet Doss continues inch by inch, holding the soldier above the void, dragging him toward a safer slope. Another step, another heartbeat. Life and death are balanced on his shoulders. Commanders shout, urging men to advance or retreat, but they are frozen in disbelief. How is one unarmed man moving repeatedly across open ground under relentless fire? One officer mutters, "He's saving more men than an entire battalion." And indeed, the tally begins to climb, dozens of lives already pulled from the jaws of death. But as Doss reaches the ridge again, surveying the battlefield, he sees the slope ahead is even more perilous. Wounded men are scattered, and Japanese soldiers are still entrenched, firing without mercy. For a brief moment, you can almost feel the weight of the impossible task settling on him. Yet he steps forward again. The afternoon sun beats down on Hacksaw Ridge, casting long, jagged shadows across the rocks. You can almost feel the heat mingling with the smoke, the air heavy with the scent of blood and cordite. Doss has already crossed the ridge dozens of times, each trip stealing more strength from his limbs, each haul a test of endurance beyond any human expectation. A new wave of wounded men appears, trapped behind shattered bunkers and tangled barbed wire. Doss looks up, scanning the open ground ahead. Bullets whistle past his helmet, ripping the air with deadly precision. Mortar rounds explode in showers of mud and rock. Most men would hesitate. Most men would flee, but not him. He grabs a stretcher and another soldier, lifting him carefully, feeling the tremble in the young man's arms. Inch by inch, they move. You can almost feel the strain in Doss's back, the way every muscle screams, the way his lungs burn for air. Around him, explosions continue, men scream, and the ridge shakes with the impact of relentless artillery. At this point, even the Japanese soldiers seem to pause, stunned by the relentless courage of a single unarmed American. Commanders whisper to each other, eyes wide. He's done the impossible again. With each crossing, Doss chips away at the chaos, carving pockets of hope where only despair had lived moments before. But then, a sudden blast erupts close to him, knocking him off balance. Dust and debris fill the air. For a heartbeat, it feels as though the ridge itself is trying to claim him. And yet, Even as the world threatens to collapse around him, he rises, clutching another soldier, ready to face the impossible once more. By late afternoon, Hacksaw Ridge is a landscape of shattered earth and shattered men. You can almost feel the ground trembling under the relentless pounding of artillery, the air thick with smoke, the cries of the wounded echoing like a chorus of despair. Blood stains the rocks, mud, and sand, painting the battlefield with the cost of each step. Doss moves again. His arms ache, his legs feel like lead, yet he refuses to stop. Another soldier lies trapped, pinned by a fallen tree branch, groaning in pain. Bullets streak past him, some grazing his uniform, others tearing into the dirt at his feet. You can almost feel the sting in the air, the heat of the explosions, the weight of every life hanging on his shoulders. He lifts the soldier, securing him across his back, and begins the painstaking drag toward safety. Inch by inch, step by step, he moves against gravity, fatigue, and fear itself. Around him, men shout orders, warnings, encouragement, but none could have prepared them for the sheer will powering this unarmed medic. One of his commanding officers watches from a nearby trench, disbelief etched into his face. "I've never seen a man do this," he mutters. "Not once, not twice, he's going back and forth again and again." With every trip, Doss defies the impossible, proving that courage, not firepower, can shape the battlefield. Yet the ridge is far from quiet. A sudden mortar barrage erupts on the far flank, sending debris showering down. Doss pauses, listening, calculating, and then, without hesitation, he charges forward once more, knowing that more lives hang in the balance. Evening falls on Hacksaw Ridge, but the fight shows no mercy. Shadows stretch long across the jagged rocks, and the air is electric with tension. Every explosion, every shout, every gunshot amplified in the fading light. You can almost feel the exhaustion in the men, the weight of fear pressing down on every soul still standing. Doss is still moving. Trip after trip, he drags wounded soldiers across open ground, over jagged rocks and past entrenched enemy fire. His uniform is shredded, his hands raw, and his body screams in protest, but the fire in his eyes burns brighter than ever. Each life he saves is a small victory carved out of chaos, a defiance of death itself. 75 men. That's the number whispered among the surviving troops. 75 men carried from certain death by one unarmed private. You can almost feel the disbelief coursing through the officers who watch, the stunned admiration in the eyes of those too wounded to move. No tactic, no strategy, no artillery could have accomplished what this single medic has done. Then another explosion. This one lands dangerously close, throwing dirt, rock, and debris into the air. Doss hits the ground, disoriented, but instinctively grabs the nearest soldier and hauls him toward safety. Around him, the ridge rumbles like a beast, alive with fire and fury, and yet the medic presses on. It's almost impossible to imagine. One man, unarmed, against the full force of an entrenched enemy. Yet somehow, against every law of probability and survival, Doss continues. The impossible has become reality, and the ridge will never forget his name. Night begins to settle over Hacksaw Ridge, but the battle does not pause. The smoke from earlier explosions hangs like a ghost across the crags, and the flashes of gunfire illuminate the jagged rocks in brief, violent strobe. You can almost feel the tension vibrating in the air, each heartbeat of the wounded echoing like drums of war. Doss makes one last sweep across the battlefield. His arms tremble, his legs feel like they could give out at any moment, but the faces of the soldiers he has saved push him forward. A young corporal cries out from a shallow crater, unable to climb the slope alone. Without hesitation, Doss lifts him onto his back, ignoring the searing pain in his own body, and begins the arduous climb to the ridge's edge. The Japanese fire intensifies, aware now that this lone medic is wreaking havoc on their efforts to hold the ridge. Bullets tear past, some striking rocks mere inches from his face. A mortar lands nearby, showering him with dirt and shrapnel. You can almost feel the heat of the blast, the sting in the skin, the chaotic roar of the battlefield pressing in from all sides. Yet Doss moves with unshakable focus. Each step, each drag, each life saved is a testament to a will stronger than any weapon. Commanders whisper in disbelief. He's done it. He's gone back 75 times, 75 lives saved one man against an army. And still, Doss moves. Another wounded soldier lies ahead, the final challenge of the day, and with grim determination he presses forward once more. By the dead of night, Hacksaw Ridge is a battlefield frozen in terror and awe. The smoke has thinned, leaving the jagged rocks slick with blood and mud. You can almost feel the stillness pressing down, the exhausted groans of the wounded, the distant cries of retreating soldiers, and the haunting echo of what has transpired. Doss approaches the last of the wounded soldiers he has seen that day. The boy is young, barely conscious, and pinned under a crumpled machine gun emplacement. The medic's arms ache, his body feels like it's about to collapse, yet he does not hesitate. Every step toward the boy is a battle in itself. You can almost feel the rhythm of his heartbeat, matching the pulse of the ridge itself, steady and unrelenting. He lifts the soldier with a grunt, muscles screaming, and drags him toward the cliff's edge. The Japanese positions are largely silent now, but danger is still everywhere. Snipers could still strike, hidden mortars could still fall. Yet somehow, against all odds, Doss completes the final crossing of the day. Commanders stare in stunned silence. "I've never seen anything like this," one whispers. "He saved more men than an entire battalion, and he's still standing." The ridge, once a symbol of terror, has become a monument to one man's courage. And in that moment, the impossibility of his actions sinks in. 75 lives saved, one unarmed soldier defying death itself. But even as the battlefield falls quiet, the question lingers. How could a single man change the course of an entire fight with nothing but courage and an unbreakable will? Dawn breaks the next morning over Hacksaw Ridge. The smoke has lifted, leaving jagged rocks, scattered helmets, and the silent testimony of a brutal battle. You can almost feel the weight of the night's events in the cool morning air, the echo of every scream, every explosion, every life hanging by a thread. Desmond Doss sits on a rock, exhausted, hands trembling, body bruised and battered. Around him, soldiers slowly stir, some crawling, some leaning on each other, all alive because of his relentless courage. 75 men, boys, corporals, privates, still breathing because one unarmed medic refused to abandon them. You can almost hear the whispered prayers of the men he saved, the gratitude that cannot be spoken, only felt. Word spreads quickly through the ranks. Commanders, officers, and soldiers alike marvel at what they have witnessed. "A single man saved more than a battalion could," one officer murmurs. "Unarmed, yet unstoppable, reckless, yet perfect in his resolve." Doss's heroism becomes legend even before the smoke clears, a story repeated in hushed tones, a symbol of courage that transcends the horrors of war. Years later, the Medal of Honor would recognize his impossible feat. But on that ridge, it wasn't medals that mattered. It was life, hope, and the belief that courage could defy death. As you imagine the battlefield, the smoke, the blood, and the cries fading into memory, one truth remains clear. Sometimes, one person can hold back the tide of despair with nothing but heart. The ridge remembers him. History remembers him. And every time you hear his story, you can almost feel the wind sweeping across Hacksaw Ridge, carrying the echo of a soldier who dared to be more than a man. He became a lifeline.